What's up, guys? This is Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lantern, bringing you guys another episode of the NCL Season 2 Draft Recap Series. Today we will be covering the Seattle Staraptors draft for Season 2 and my good friend Daniel or Corona. Daniel is another returning coach to the league. Last season he drafted a mono dragon team with the first overall pick, and this season he ended up with the second overall pick. Heading right into things, I had no idea what he wanted to grab, and I know the Pokemon that he grabbed, a lot of people had their eyes on. We actually did allow this, although this is technically still unreleased. He did end up grabbing Zahra Aura. Zahra Aura is an extremely fast electric type. It's really good with Volt Absorb, so it's only got one weakness to ground, and it's an amazing electric sponge. It also has a unique move called Plasma Fists, which turns any normal type attack used against it into an electric type attack, which obviously heals it. So against something like a Mega Lopunny, Zahra Aura is faster than Mega Lopunny, so you can use Plasma Fist on the Mega Lopunny, and then if it uses Return or well, wouldn't use Quick Attack. If it uses Return after that, then it turns into an electric type attack, which will heal the Zahra Aura. Zahra Aura is not very bulky whatsoever. It's a decent mixed attacker. It gets things like Volt Switch. It doesn't have a ton of great coverage options. The best thing it has to hit ground types is like Grass Knot or Hidden Power Ice. I don't even think it gets U-turn, so it can't really pivot off of ground types very well either. But it is extremely fast, up there near the top of the speed tiering in all of Draft League. Things like Mega Alakazam and Mega Aerodactyl are the fastest, and then you have things like Mega Sceptile, Mega Beedrill, and a Cellgor all at 145 right below that, and then you've got a Cellgor at 143. Pretty cool mon. I'm actually surprised to see it go second overall, although it does have sort of a new toy element to it. I'm not necessarily sure if it's good enough for a first overall pick. I'm not necessarily sure if it's good enough for tier 1. We sort of just tiered it there as an experimental sort of thing coming into season 2, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. I know I had my eye on this, I know Dom had his eye on this, and I know Jed had his eye on this, and none of us got it because Corona took it second overall. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so second overall pick, I mean, that's pretty cool. It's a fast electric type, obviously, so um, that's sort of a benefit of getting a nice early pick. Now with his next pick, he's going to grab something pretty fast-ish. It's also a huge threat in the Draft League format, and it starts as Dragon Fairy Steel Core. He's going to grab Zygarde. It's another electric immunity, so now he's got two electric immunities technically, as well as just being a huge threat. Zygarde 50% is well known for its Choice Banded sets and its Dragon Dance sets. It can also run coil sets pretty well. Sub-coil seems to be sort of standard. And the main reason that you take Zygarde 50% is for 1,000 arrows. In my opinion, the most broken move in the game. A ground type, a 90 power ground type attack with 100% accuracy that can hit anything, including flying types and levitators. Pairing Zygarde with Zahra Aura, I don't know if it makes that much sense. Zygarde is fairly bulky on the physical side, but its 4 times weakness to ice doesn't really help it pivoting in on things because you can slap HP ice on pretty much anything and hit it super effectively. I think lack of a good physical Dragon Stab doesn't help Zygarde 50% out that much. I don't believe it gets Dragon Claw. I think it's stuck in using Outrage or Dragon Tail as its physical dragon moves. I could be wrong. Again, please feel free to let me know if I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Yeah, it's a decent physical wall. It gets some interesting coverage options. You can slap like Sludge Wave on there. It's got an okay special attack stat to use something like Sludge Wave to hit a fairy type with. But most of the time you'll see this thing just spamming 1,000 arrows, or after a Dragon Dance or two, just spamming 1,000 arrows against a lot of things. The fact that it gets extreme speed is also really helpful. Some extra priority to pick things off, especially against things like Mamoswine and Weavile that can run Ice Shard very easily. Extreme speed will go before the Ice Shard. And we'll let Zygarde maybe take those things out before they can get off the priority ice attack that it's so weak to. Yache Berry is a very easy way to deflect an ice attack and potentially Dragon Dance and then kill something. I think Zygarde fits his team very well. I know he's never used Zygarde before. I don't think he's definitely never used Zahra Aura before, and I'm excited to see how his team sort of fills out from here. With his next pick, he's going to grab his fairy type. This was a snipe from myself. I know I wanted to grab this again as he grabs Mimikyu. Mimikyu is personally my favorite Pokemon in Draft League format. I actually just got a plush of Mimikyu for my birthday from my good friend Austin. And yeah, Mimikyu, despite how Its base stats look, it's a neat speed tier. It puts it right above Zygarde 50%, so you can't speed creep over Zygarde 50%. You're going to have to waste some more EVs to speed creep over Mimikyu. It's actually got a fairly decent Spit F stat, but the main reason that it's so good is that it's a fairy type, first of all, and its ability to disguise. So disguise lets it tank a hit. It's basically a free focus sash where you're not going to lose any HP. And it lets you get a free Swords Dance, essentially, which lets you sort of steamroll through teams because of Shadow Sneak. So he's got some good priority options. It's the fairy part of his Fairy Dragon Steel Core. Again, I'm a huge fan of Mimikyu. I think it can perform pretty well on this team. So far, he's looking very physically offensive at this point, unfortunately. So we'll look to see if he maybe grabs some special attackers later on in the draft. Um, Mimikyu cannot fill the role of a special attacker very well. It's only base 50 special attack, and it doesn't get the best move coverage for it. But we'll look out to see what's going on there. Seems like a lot of setup sweepers at this point too, with just Zygarde and Mimikyu. Round 4 he ended up sniping me, but I'm glad he did because it would have been a mistake if I grabbed this, and he actually grabbed Metagross in the round where everyone was grabbing bulky waters. He grabbed a bulky steel. Metagross is a fantastic physical wall. It's just like Zygarde can be. It covers Mimikyu's steel weakness. It covers Zygarde's ice weakness. I think it complements both of them very well. Unfortunately, at the moment, he's got quite a big ground weakness going on for himself, so he's going to want to look at something like a flying type maybe a little bit later on. Yeah, Metagross is kind of cool. It's a stealth rocker, which is neat. He doesn't have any hazard setting before this. It can run both ways. It's actually got a decent special attack stat. It's relatively slow. It's the slowest thing he's got going on his team right now, but it's well known for its rock polish sets or agility sets. It's the same. It's really the same move. I know Corona has used Metagross in the past before, so I'm excited to see how he's going to use it again. Good Steel Stab, which really helps out his team. Some more priority, so he's got Bullet Punch on here. He's got Shadow Sneak on Mimikyu and Extreme Speed on Zygarde. I think Zahra Aura gets Quick Attack or something, which is like whatever. Yeah, Metagross is pretty cool. I'm a fan to see how he's going to use it. Most of the time you'll see Assault Vest sets. Sometimes you'll see Rock sets. Sometimes you'll see Life Orb sets. It can be run Choice Scarf, Choice Banded. Lots of versatile options that you can run with there. Clear Body is really cool because even though it's a physical attacker, you can't be intimidated. It will just not work. So I think that's really cool because Intimidate looks really good against his team right now, but not against the Metagross. Round 5, Corona is going to dip into Tier 4. Really early tier 4 pick and an extremely early Ditto pick and grab the Ditto. So while his team maybe doesn't look like it's the best setup fodder right now, he's got Ditto. So if it does look like setup fodder later, he can bring in Ditto. Ditto's a tremendous choice scarfer, especially for scouting out sets. That's pretty much the only reason you bring Ditto is for Imposter choice scarf. It doesn't have to run Choice Scarf. I've seen Ditto run in different ways. It's pretty interesting. I don't really think that it synergizes super well with this team right now because I think Corona's team is more of setup sweeping itself. He's missing maybe some defensive pivots. He doesn't have really any defensive pivots at the moment to sort of get into to be able to set up later, like good chip damage or anything like that. So we'll sort of see how that works. Ditto's a really basic pick. I don't really want to touch on this too long because it's just a Ditto. It's a pink blob that runs a choice scarf and transforms into you and then is faster than you and uses a move. I don't know. Next up, he grabbed one of my personal favorites and a really good hazard setter as well as really fast Pokemon. One of the only things faster than a Cellgor, and faster than Zahra Aura, he grabs a Cellgor. Really good spikes user, an Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, it got Toxic Spikes, so that's pretty cool. It's mostly known as a suicide lead, although you can see it's specially offensive quite a few times. It does get Water Shuriken, so it adds some more priority to his team. It's a bug type, which he previously didn't have. Again, spikes is something that he didn't have before either, so that's really cool. Yeah, that's kind of a Cellgor. It's very frail, though. It doesn't have really good defense or special defense. It's not really a physical attacker, although it can be a pivot. It does get U-turn. It does get a decent physical move pool, things like knockoff. I think it gets Bug Bite, U-turn. I can't remember what other physical moves it gets off the top of my head. Maybe like Aqua Tail or Poison Fang or something like that. Poison Tail maybe. I can't be too sure on a Cellgor. The main thing that you draft it for is super speed and hazard setting. That's pretty much the only reason that you would take it. In round 7, he opts to go and pick up another bug type and another bug type that can set spikes in Scolipede, a speed boost user, which is really cool. Scolipede speed boost was kind of the thing last season, especially on Cade's team. He had like 3 speed boosters. Scolipede, another relatively frail mon, but it's much more known as a physical attacker. A little bit slower than the Cellgor, fits in between what he's got going on now with, it fits in between Mimikyu and Zahra Aura for him, which is pretty nice. It's another spikes and T-spikes user. We do not allow speed pass or any kind of stat pass, so he can't pass sword stances, he can't pass speed. I know his good friend and my good friend TJ has used Scolipede very well in the past, and I would imagine that's sort of where he's getting the inspiration from. Scolipede can be an extremely good setup sweeper late game, although I think that something like a Zygarde or a Mimikyu sort of fill that role as well. I like the poison stab. I like the grounded poison type. T-spikes didn't look that great against something like a Metagross, but they're very effective against something like Zahra Aura, Zygarde, or Mimikyu, which I really like. He's kind of weak to fire at this point, and he's still pretty weak to ground. So we'll look out for those things. His fire resist is Zygarde, which doesn't always want to take a hit necessarily. And like I said, I think that's just sort of a big thing. Is fire and ground at this point for his team. I don't think he's got the best ways to deal with it. He does have some good fairy killers to support his Zygarde. Metagross and Scolipede are very good fairy killers to support him there. Round 8, he ends up surprising all of us and grabs Politoed. Which is really cool. So he's covering up his fire weakness with some rain. I think that's a really neat idea, actually. I don't know how effective it'll prove to be during the season because he may need to bring his rain to do that. And at this stage of the draft, you're sort of looking at some more niche picks, but um, for Daniel, his team's actually sort of coming together. He still doesn't have any hazard removal, but he's got a lot of good options. Politoed is a really good specially defensive pivot. It can be a physically defensive pivot as well. It's a water immunity if he needs it. He doesn't really have a water weakness at this point, but it's technically a water immunity. Um, it's a water type for a fire, water, grass core. He doesn't have a grass type to complete that core, but not yet at least. So sort of see how it plays out for him. I think the rain is really cool. Firing off like spec scalds and rain can also be very useful. Politoed's pretty well known for like a rest sleep talk set, just sort of tanking hits, resting up, and then firing off scalds in the rain is really neat. It's also known a lot for like toxic is kind of a big thing for it. It can prevent explosion technically with damp. You probably won't really see that very much. Again, I'm not sure how much sense this makes. I like it as a fire resist and a double fire resist because of the rain. It basically if the rain is up, this 4 times resist fire for the Scolipede and the Metagross. And the Cellgor, sorry, which I think is kind of important. Yeah, I'm liking the idea of Politoed on this team. I think it can fit a very niche role for it, and I think it's pretty cool. And then round 9, again, he surprises all of us, and we'll sort of touch on this in tomorrow's draft recap, but he ends up grabbing a Mega Swampert. Nice rain abuser for the Politoed. Fantastic physical attacker. It's actually not half bad as a special attacker, you'll notice. It's a little bit slow, but then it's got Swift Swim to make up for that, so that's why you draft Rain with Swampert, is to abuse Swift Swim, because that's its only really middling stat is its speed. It's got really good natural bulk, something like Zygarde. Zygarde and Mega Swampert pair really well together in my mind in that way. Unfortunately, it's 4 times weak to grass, which he also has in his Politoed. Although he does have Metagross and Scolipede to sort of cover that up. I don't know if it's super well covered yet. I like the idea of Mega Swampert. I think having more good ground stab is always useful, but he does already have Zygarde, and he does already have Politoed, so he's doubling up on typings. He's just sort of grabbing a Rain Sweeper that can fit on his team. One of the other Rain Sweepers was already gone, and he did need a Mega still, so Mega Swampert makes sense in that light. Round 10, he's going to start dipping into his tier 5s. That's all he has left now is tier 5s to take, and he grabs a huge surprise pick. I had no idea this was coming, and I've never seen it drafted in my entire life, but he's going to grab himself a fire type in Seer. Looking at its abilities and its attacking stats, it's actually not half bad, I don't think. Gluttony with like a super berry is pretty cool. Putting itself in Blaze is really awesome as well. 98 in both attack and special attack is actually pretty decent, and a 101 speed stat is also really good. It's above Mimikyu and Zygarde, which I think is really cool. I think it can maybe fill a niche role in a few games. I'm not totally against this pick, to be honest. Like, I think it's kind of a meme pick because I've just never seen it before, and maybe he needed a fire type, whether that be for another fire resist or just for an offensive fire presence. But I'm not totally against this pick. I could see it working on the team. I can see what it sort of brings to the table for him, and um, I'll be excited to see if it actually picks up any kills this season, to be honest. I think that'll be really neat. Corona managed to make playoffs with his Mono Dragon team last season, and he pulled out some wild sets with a lot of stuff. I know he's a very creative builder, and I'm excited to see where this goes. Last but not least, he picks up another meme pick. This one is actually extremely scary as he grabs Slacking. Those stats are no joke. It's actually not very bulky on the special side. It's pretty bulky on the physical side. It does only have the one weakness to fighting. Gives him a ghost immunity, which Metagross and Mimikyu appreciate for sure. And Ditto obviously not being that because it's going to transform. So unless it's transforming into a normal type, it's not a ghost immunity. I think base 100 speed is kind of neat. He was lacking a base 100 before this. Seer just sits right above it. So he's got a lot of sort of in between there. He's got a Zygarde, he's got a Mimikyu, he's got a Slacking and a Seer all sort of at the same speed range, which is really cool. This thing's got 160 base attack. It's going to hit like a truck. In my mind, something like a Banded Giga Impact set can just blow something back if you don't have a normal resist. I've seen Tup use this in NPA, and I actually think it's quite the threat. It can be a decent Scarf user. The problem is that you're stuck in with it the turn after you hit something. Unless you use this in doubles and you like entrain away Truant or something like that. I think it might be a little bit challenging to use in singles. I think if anyone can use it, it's going to be Corona. And again, I'm excited to see how it plays out this season. I think Slacking is a big surprise pick. I think it can show us a number of different things that can do. I have no idea what kind of set this has. I know it can be probably the best revenge killer in the game if you run Scarf Retaliate. Something gets knocked out and then you use Scarf Retaliate and just blow something back with another stupidly hard-hitting move. Yeah, so let's move on to his strengths and weaknesses here. Notice he's got a few major resists. He has 5 steel resists and only 1 weakness, so I think he's got steel covered quite well. He has 4 grass for Mimikyu, which actually frees up Mimikyu quite a bit because it's only weak to Ghost and Steel, I believe. He's 4 grass resist. Grass is not the best offensive typing, only 2 grass weaknesses. He has 4 fire resist at this point, which is actually really good because he does have a major weakness to fire as well. Worthy to note that fire is still probably an issue unless he has the rain. And he has 4 poison resists, which doesn't help a whole lot of stuff because he didn't really have anything weak to poison to begin with because he didn't draft a grass type. And he didn't draft a fairy that was weak to poison. So yeah, I don't know how good poison is going to be against his team anyways. I'm not really sure how much sense it would make to bring poison coverage, but there you go. He does resist poison. He has 0 weaknesses to poison and 4 resists, so that's a pretty good resist if you ask me. Another worthy one is he has 0 weaknesses to bug, and he has 2 bug resistances. I believe Corona actually has the least weaknesses out of any team. I'm not entirely sure if I'm correct on that, but it could be the case. So there's not too much to talk about there. Major weaknesses, again, fire seems like it's still going to be pretty good. Seer doesn't look like it wants to take a fire attack. Something like Politoed and Swampert are probably going to have to take on that role quite often. I don't think Zygarde's necessarily going to want to take one either. Excuse me, Ground still looks really spammable against his team. He didn't draft a flying type. He didn't draft a ground resist either, did he? He drafted one. What is it? A Cellgor. A Cellgor is his ground resist, and a Cellgor is not a bulky boy. So ground looks very spammable, as well as rock. He does have 3 rock resists in Metagross, Mega Swampert, and Zygarde, but a Cellgor, Scolipede, and Seer are all weak to it. I think Scolipede kind of being one of the pinnacles of this team, especially because it has the speed boost. I think it's probably going to be one of his main setup sweepers. That being weak to rock is not great. And now we'll talk about the hazard game, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. He has no removal. He drafted 0 removal options, and I think that's going to hinder his team quite a bit, actually. The fact that he doesn't have any removal means that he's going to rely on Ditto to transform into something that has removal to be able to get rid of hazards, if that makes sense. Maybe he just didn't want to get rid of his own spikes and stuff like that from a Cellgor and Scolipede. Metagross gets Stealth Rocks, Mega Swampert gets Stealth Rocks. A Cellgor and Scolipede both get spikes and Toxic Spikes. Maybe his plan relies on T-Spikes and Spikes being up the whole time, so he didn't want to remove them or something, but I think it's going to be very easy for another team to remove them against him. In exchange, he will probably get up a setup move, but again, I think that rocks could maybe hinder his team once people start figuring out how to play against him. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest weakness for me on Daniel's team is that, and also a lack of special attackers. And I'll sort of talk about that here in the summary. He has a wide variety of really good physical attackers. He's kind of lacking in the special side, and he's got a few really fast things, and then a lot of stuff in the middle. So we'll sort of look forward to that. Ditto obviously sort of skews a lot of things because it's got base 48 stats across the board, and it's never going to use those stats. It's always going to copy the opponent's stats, so we'll sort of see how that goes. Not the bulkiest of teams. He does have some big weaknesses like we talked about to ground, to fire. I think those are some big ones. To counteract that, he kind of has some grass weaknesses in Politoed and Mega Swampert that he maybe hasn't covered up too much. Like Seer is still not going to want to take one. Metagross is probably going to fill. I think Metagross is probably going to fill the role of more of a defensive pivot on this team. Same with Politoed. I don't think he's going to be able to find the ways to make them offensive all the time. I think they're really going to have to fill a defensive role on this team. Zahra Aura is really cool. I don't know if he drafted well around Zahra Aura. That's kind of my only thing because ground seems to be a big thing against his team, and that's Zahra Aura's only weakness. So we'll see how Daniel ends up playing throughout the season. I'm still excited to see how it works. I was really excited to see how the Mono Dragon worked, and it ended up pushing him to playoffs. So it is a little bit more competitive this season than it was last season, and there's less memeing. Like last season, we had a full stall team. We had a 580 base stats team. We had a Mono Dragon team. What else do we have? Do we have anything else that was memey? We had someone just bring basically all the same sets every week. So, yeah, that's all from me. My channel will be linked down in the description. Daniel does not produce YouTube content, so unfortunately I don't have anything for him. I'd like to thank all of you for visiting the NCL YouTube channel and supporting our videos. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you continue to support us throughout the season. Obviously, these draft recaps are reasonably coming to a close. I think there's still 4 more to do after today, so you'll see those coming up in the next 4 days. And we have some other cool content coming for you guys. I don't really want to spoil it. Obviously, by this point, you'll have seen the Coach Profiles episode for at least Jed, and potentially even some more Coach Profiles episodes, but there are other series of content that will be coming out on the channel, and I urge you to check out each and every single one of them. If you're a coach, thank you very much for participating in Season 2. I really appreciate it. I think it's a great group of guys we've got. I feel comfortable in saying that I'm friends with everyone, and I think that's a really important part of being part of a league. So anyways, that's all for me, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day.